This week on Moulz Mel at the Movies, we discuss the 1992 film Trespass, directed by Walter Hill and starring Bill Paxton, Ice-T, William Sadler, and Ice Cube. Two firemen in a burning building get a treasure map. Rare and expensive gold items are hidden in a closed-down factory in St. Louis. Once there, they're trapped in by a dangerous gang considering it their territory. This week, on Moulz Mel at the Movies, let's go see Trespass. Welcome back to another edition of Moulz and Mel at the Movies.
And we have a guest this time.
Oh, we have another guest. This is only our second guest in Moulz and Mel at the Movies history.
You made the extra popcorn, right? You didn't forget this time, right?
No, I made the extra popcorn, but you got to keep it away from the goat. This week, we do have a very special guest. He is an actor and a comedian. As a comic, he has shared stages with such diverse acts as Dave Chappelle, Weird Al Yankovic, and music stars Bare Naked Ladies. As an actor, he has studied acting with Dee Wallace in her Los Angeles masterclass and is best known for his roles on The Middle, Anger Management, and Criminal Minds. Some know him as one of the stars of the film which he helped co-write, Concessionaires Must Die. Some know him as the cartoonist behind the webcomic Breaking the Ice. Some know him as the Great Bolo. Some may even know him as Glenn Pumpweed. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in the presence of the Hollywood elite. From Woburn, Massachusetts, standing at 5 feet 11 inches, weighing an approximate... John?
I don't know, we'll go 203.
203 pounds. Please give a warm Rap Rankings welcome to our dear, close, personal friend, Mr. John M. Keating.
Wow, you weren't kidding. That was quite the intro. That's hard to I didn't realize there was so much information about me on the internet. I was like, wow, that sums it up right there. That is a life lived right there. That's me.
Wow, I just want to say, I think you might. We've had some distinguished guests, but you sound like the most distinguished guest we've had. I'm like nervous now.
Well, I'm nervous. I don't know if I can live up to that. That is.
Well, I mean, I assume, folks, if you're listening, this is, it's possible that we have a lot of new listeners for this episode. Some of my pals from wrestling Twitter might finally be checking out the show, so hello to them. But like I said, we're in the presence of the Hollywood elite now. No, I mean, you kind of need to act like you've been here before.
Right. That's
me?
Right. Okay.
Are you talking to me? I need to act like I've been here before?
No, I'm talking to Mel.
Probably
he said
should.
He was nervous.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm nervous. It's great. This has nothing to do with anything, but you just reminded me. Last night, I had a dream that, I was in Hollywood and, Rick Ross was, recruiting for, a new label he was starting, but then it morphed into, a movie studio. And I was trying to convince him that I wanted to be an actor. It was a movie studio run like a record label. So you would have actors just be in a bunch of movies. Weird thing. I just want to say I wasn't hired. He didn't trust me. We sat down at dinner and it was this whole thing. I had a really great steak though at the dinner in the dream. It was rare, which I've never had in real life, but I remember telling Rick Ross, oh, this steak is great. And he just stared at me like I was crazy. So
I mean, that is kind of how the studio system worked back in the day, right?
Right.
You just worked
Back
for the studio, you were under contract and,
Exactly. Yeah, I only know this because my co-host Moulz. I've watched a lot of films from the golden age of Hollywood and filmmaking. which I enjoy quite a bit. But like I know that's kind of how it worked back then. You know, they would just appear in multiple films, and you know,
it was almost like a factory job. Like you'd work your way up,
right?
You know,
right.
like you'd go from like background to like one-liner, co-star, small co-star, and you'd work your way up. It was much more linear than it is now.
Yeah.
Well, Mel, you may just be clairvoyant because you're talking about that steak, and I'm thinking about the studio plate, the very famous studio plate. Maybe some steak with some salad.
Studio plate?
Yeah, they sell these studio plates out here in California. It's like, I guess, for the actors. John,
oh, really?
Any insight into this? The studio plate.
I don't know the studio plate. I don't.
The studio plate.
Where though? Like, because where was the studio
restaurants
plate?
That are like near restaurants that deliver that are near the studios, like some studio plates that they sell at Osteria La Buca.
Oh, I know that place. Yeah, I've had dinner there before. Yeah, it's really good on Melrose, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so they have studio plates that like they deliver to Paramount down the road. Some places just nearby those film studios. I know in Culver City there's Sony, and they have a place out there that delivers studio plates.
Oh, that's interesting. Because usually
some, courier stuff. So I was at one point in time I was actually doing some studio plate delivery.
You were the studio plate guy. You were the hookup for studio plates. Because usually, if you're working on a show, they'll have catering, they'll have craft services. So you just eat because they want to keep everybody. That's the reason. I only learned that very recently, and it makes total sense to me. The reason that they feed you is not because you're so important and so famous or anything like that. The reason they feed you is so they can keep everybody there, so people don't. So people don't just kind of drift off into LA. Now they're late coming back from lunch. Everybody's there. They know where everybody is.
So come to think of it, I think this studio plate may be not for actors.
Casting
maybe
crew.
It's for the people that work around there, like at the studios and the offices and stuff.
I bet. Yeah, exactly. I bet it's probably for like the executives and stuff like that, or for the people working in the offices there, production and stuff.
Well, there you go. We're already getting Mel and I are currently making a film right now. Mel, if you want to tell them a little bit about Rab the movie, and then maybe tell them a little bit about this rating system that we got.
Rab the movie is we don't need to. It's in an embarrassing stage right now. So.
Is it in development?
It's in development. Potentially development hell. I don't know. We got
it's still casting. So I'll let you know.
Well, we have this great actress that we're looking at, and Moulz doesn't want her to be a part of the picture. I think she's great. We got this live goat that's just been chilling in the studio that like has been disrupting the whole process. It's just there's a lot we got to sort out. But
that sounds like never work with children or animals. They always or goats.
Right. So but I will tell you about the rating system because it's integral to this segment here. So basically, our rating system is adopted from our music rating system, which is kind of the whole show at large. It's a 1 to 10 scale. I'll just go ahead and read the copy here. So each film is rated on a scale of 1 to 10. These numbers do not reflect the quality of a film, as that is indeterminable. Instead, each number reflects the level of enjoyment. In short, here's what each number means. 10 means this is a perfect film to me, one of my favorite films of all time. 9 means I love it. 8 means I like it a lot. 7 means I like it. 6 means it's all right. I don't dislike it, but I can't say that I like it. 5 means I feel practically nothing about it. 4 means it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but I dislike it. 3 just means I dislike it. 2 means I hate it. And 1 means I absolutely can't stand it. One of the worst films I've ever seen. Side note, you can add a plus or a minus to those numbers if you like. It's basically an indicator that means one of two things. 1 is like saying a light or strong version of that number. So like a 6 plus would be like a strong 6, or an 8 minus would be like a light 8. It also means like, it's kind of an indicator that, hey, my opinion might go up or down in the future. On the show, we've had 6 pluses go up to 7, sometimes even 8s, 9s can drop to like, a strong 8. It's just, the ratings aren't static basically, but they have the pluses and minuses have no mathematical or statistical value at the end of, the whole thing where we add everything up. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So with that said, usually around this part, when we have a guest, we'd like to ask the guests if they have a rating in mind, if you want to give your rating first or you want to let us lead the way. It's up to you.
I'll go first. It's fine. Yeah, so based on that scale, I gotta say I would give it like a 7+.
Wow.
I liked it. I was shocked. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked it. I mean, when I saw it was Zemeckis and Bob Gale, I was like, oh, that's the Back to the Future. That's the Back to the Future team. So you already got me right there. And I love Bill Paxton and William Sadler's great. Ice-T, Ice Cube. I'm like, okay, so the cast is there, you know?
Right.
And then it was just really fun in a weird way. Like, you know, it was a Western. It was a Western set in the inner city, mm-hmm. you know? And speaking of classic movies, it reminded me of like Treasure of Sierra Madre, where there was really no heroes in it. And everybody was kind of morally gray. You know, and I liked it. I enjoy. I would watch it again.
Right. Word. Yeah. That's cool because this may be a first in Moulz and Mel at the Movies history. Because Moulz and I talked off air, so we kind of know what our ratings are. But I think we're all in agreement here.
Oh, okay, actually. Yeah, it was surprising.
Yeah, it's true. Moulz, Mel, and John connect.
Yeah.
7+ from all of us.
Wow. Oh, wow. Oh, I thought you were wowing me because I was going too high. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we it sounds like we all enjoy it like the same amount. Yeah, you pretty much nailed it. It's very fun, and that's like in general, I enjoy more movies than I don't enjoy. And this was one of those things where I enjoyed my time. I was entertained. I would recommend it to someone. I'd watch it again. And yeah, like it is a Western, like, it has like this whole like standoff element. I mean, it's just, but we'll get into it. But like, yeah, it was, so far this season of the show, like we've had duds, we've had surprises. This is one of the surprises where it's like, oh, I'm glad I saw this. This is cool. This is good.
I put this on the schedule initially because selfishly, I wanted to see this movie. I'd never seen it before, but the people involved in this film, Walter Hill and Bob Zemeckis specifically, working on Tales from the Crypt on HBO at this time in '92. So, because those guys had such deep roots into that show, and Mel and I, John, are both huge Tales from the Crypt fans, I was like, okay, this is a no-brainer. This was like basically a lot of the players involved here too. I mean, William Sadler was in The Man Who Was Death, which is the first ever episode of Tales from the Crypt. Bill Paxton is in an episode called People Who Live in Brass Hearses. About like this ice cream truck guy, which is great. A really crazy episode. Like they're no strangers to that world. So it's like with the people involved in this film, from the acting side to the writing to the directing, I've just wanted to see this film for a while. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a good opportunity to do so, because as it turns out, we're also obviously, as a rap review podcast that we do, Rap Rankings, this Moulz and Mel at the Movies is just kind of like a smaller umbrella within that show. So, when I was looking at the soundtrack, I thought, wow, this is 12 tracks, 11 of which are hip hop. This will be perfect for the show. And I was just, really, really hoping and crossing my fingers going into this episode with you this week that I'm like, oh man, I hope this movie's good. I hope all the people involved deliver. And I have to say, I think they did. And I mean, I was talking to Mel off air about this, that like at points I got that feel of like, Tales from the Crypt minus the horror, basically. Like I got that vibe off of the film that I wanted. And going back just a few weeks now to when we did Judgment Night, which came out in '93, that was a film that going into it,
we had high hopes for.
I had high hopes for it.
The premise seemed good,
This is almost that, and John, great shout there with Treasure of the Sierra Madre, which is a stone cold classic.
Yeah, I just watched that recently too, like about 2 months ago, and it really reminded me. I mean, just down to the gold, right?
Yeah, the gold.
The gold is the MacGuffin,
The old vagrant who's living inside of the place.
Awesome.
He's the Walter.
Yeah.
He's the Walter
Art Evans.
Houston,
he is fantastic.
Right?
He's the total that guy. Like you're like, I know that guy.
Yep.
I've seen him in other stuff, but man, was he great in that movie.
He was the Walter Houston. If this is Treasure of the Sierra Madre, he's Walter Houston.
Yeah.
You have Paxton as kind of the Tim Holt.
Yep.
Sadler as the Humphrey Bogart, and then Ice-T, Ice Cube, and their gang are kind of like the Mexicans from Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Mm.
But you throw it in this abandoned building, which I got a little bit of Reservoir
East
Dogs.
Louis.
In East St. Louis, so I'm feeling a little Reservoir Dogs with that. Like I like the way that the film. John and I are both big wrestling fans, as is Mel. I like the way that they built to sort of all of the action at the end.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I thought it actually started off almost too fast. Like there was so much going on at the beginning.
Yeah,
like that first 20 minutes.
For sure.
Yeah, they really do. And I loved the way that they would just show clips of scenes in between the credits, in between the opening titles. And it wasn't like all happening sequentially. Like there was a little bit out of time, like it was this, and then they go to black and they show an opening title. Then they go to another scene, of them finding this and then going in the opening title. But everything happened so fast at that beginning. It kind of gets you right into it, and can be it was a little overwhelming at first. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna. But then once they start getting into that, I'm a huge going back to old stuff. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan as well, and one of the classic storylines of Doctor Who episodes is Base Under Siege. And that's what this was. This was Base Under Siege. They're locked in a small, contained thing. There are people trying to get into them. They can't get out. And those kind of stories are. Attack the Block is another one that's a great movie like that. Which kind of brings in sci-fi, kind of brings in horror. You could see a horror influence in this, even though it wasn't a horror movie. Like you totally could.
Oh, for sure. I mean, with like the personnel involved. I mean, I was saying like off air with Moulz, like from the very beginning. I mean, well, just to build on what you were saying, like a guy gets like shot in the head before the 2-minute mark of the movie.
Yeah.
And then before the 3-minute, like right at the 3-minute mark, a guy is like burning alive. And I'm like, oh, this is very Tales from the Crypt. And like they pull out like the little cross as he's like examining what the guy who was burning up left behind, newspaper clippings and like the little gold cross. I'm like, oh, I'm expecting like almost supernatural horror elements. Like you see that, I'm like definitely reminded of Tales from the Crypt. I'm like, okay, like are there going to be supernatural elements in this film? But of course that never happens. But like, yeah, it almost like is
it almost feels like it's always there though.
Yeah, like it's
it could just go there anytime.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like teetering right there.
When the guy reaches into the car and he gets into the trunk or whatever, and like his hand gets
the air duct,
the air duct rather. Yeah, the what do you call it? The mouse trap gets stuck on his hand, and the musical cue that they use when that happens is like total horror movie Tales from the Crypt-esque sort of thing, where I'm like, wait, like. Is there like a monster in there that bit him? Like at any moment it could pivot in that direction. It doesn't. But yeah, I did really enjoy this. At one token, I understand what you're saying in terms of like it kind of hits the ground running and it gets started like with way too much momentum. I agree to an extent because then the movie sort of settles once they get into the warehouse. That's kind of where things start to settle into, I wouldn't call it like a brisk pace, but it builds nicely. It's a much more measured build as opposed to how they throw you into it. But I don't mind being thrown into the film like that just because it immediately kind of captured my attention.
Exactly. Yeah.
I did not find myself at any point during this film wondering when it was going to be over, how much of the film had gone on at this point. I
No, God, because it's only like an hour and 40 minutes, right? Like it's a perfect length. It's like it almost even like that latter part of it, because like what you were saying about like it hit, where it hits the ground running and such. It kind of was off putting at first, but like you do settle right into it. So it's almost kind of like a warning for people if you watch it, don't get put off by it's not like running at that pace the entire time. It almost feels like a play a little
bit. Yeah. They're like, they're acts here,
Yeah. And again, because of the closed situation, like the basic one set of it, it has that vibe to it. And it was just fun watching the characters bounce off each other, even though they're not in the same room most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely like reminds me of those like, sort of, I think they're called bottle episodes, like TV, it's like, they're all in this. I love this setting too. Like, when you have films like this, where it's just like they're in one location for the entire film, pretty much, it really does come down to the performances, and to my delight, I pretty much enjoyed everybody here, especially like the transient guy. Like, he was great. He was like just a beacon in the whole film for me. But like with this setting being for me personally, I probably lived 20 or 30 minutes away from East St. Louis for like a couple years, like in like Belleville, Illinois. So like I'm familiar with the area. So like, it's a little scary there. so as they're there, I'm like, oh yeah, I can definitely, this tension is palpable. Like they're in a part of town where like, I guess like them as like two white guys probably wouldn't ordinarily be, and their heads are kind of on the swivel and they just want to get in, get out, Well, I'm thinking East St. Louis.
Two white guys.
And that's an interesting...
One of them is Bill Sadler, by the way, who his character is like definitely racist. Well, he makes a quick
maybe not like outwardly.
He would definitely be in QAnon. Yeah.
That sort of thing. Yeah, it's like if he isn't like outright like just saying the N-word, like he definitely has like his preconceived notions about black people and things like that. Whereas
when they come upon that transient guy, he's pointing the gun at him and he's talking about, I had it hard too. I have it hard. Here's all the bad shit that goes on in my life. And all our tax dollars go to making sure that we can take care of people like you. And I'm like, oh, okay. So automatically, there, like John was saying early on, there's no real like honorable characters except for maybe the transient character.
Yeah.
Nobody.
And he's only really honorable by like attrition.
Well, exactly.
By comparison,
like his thing is circumstantial. He was just chilling, minding his own business.
Yeah, in his house, basically.
Right. Like where he was dwelling, and everyone came and trespassed on essentially his domain. Right. So, he was implicated in all of this stuff. Whereas, it's not good versus evil in this movie. This is like a heel versus heel situation here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it works. Yeah. It really does work. I think, Bill Paxton being the more affable of the two, he seems like he has, he's a little less on edge. He's a little less like...
Definitely. I mean, just to that point, though, it's like when he kind of like has like a brief little exchange with like the vagrant guy, like the vagrant guy's getting on him about being white. And like he almost seems pained when he says he's like, you black bastard. Like he didn't even really want to say it. No. Like he was a nice guy at heart. Like he really didn't want to, hurt the guy or harm the guy, Like he was the closest thing I would say to a hero in the whole thing.
But
I mean, all the way up until the end, like he's not thinking about the gold.
He's not.
After a certain point, he's like, "Listen, I just
even at the very end, he was telling the dude, he's like, come with me, like, and he was like, nah, I can't keep up. The older vagrant guy was like, I can't keep up.
Like he's the closest thing to a hero, but everyone kind of is dubious to some degree. They're all playing their part. I mean, you got Ice-T. This is him before Law and Order and like him tweeting every day. This is Ice Cube before the Family movies. Yeah. I mean, and they're still like
Ice-T with that Doc Holliday haircut.
That
long hair with the curl at the end. It's like,
it's great.
He was, to me, the costuming on him, the way he played this character, just phenomenal. Really,
love it.
I thought he was really, really good. He might have been the highlight of the movie for me.
Yeah.
Ice Cube was fine. I think he became a lot better of an actor as his career progressed.
He definitely did.
I think he's playing Ice Cube, which luckily the role doesn't demand that much more from him.
Right. I would say he's a pretty one-note character, and he's able to play Ice Cube because the character is not too far off from Ice Cube, the character as a rapper.
Right.
Snarling a lot and just kind of,
Right. Aggressive and, trigger happy. So, but yeah, he's definitely a better actor now, all the stuff he's been in.
I'd say he's a pretty good actor now.
But, he's very good. Yeah.
Early on, he was doing that thing that Dr. Dre is doing in Training Day where I'm like, oh man, even the cadence and the delivery feels like I'm just listening to you on record. Still.
Yeah, in Training Day, I'm not sure if you've ever seen Training Day, John. Probably.
Oh yes, yeah.
Dr. Dre's character is a cop, but he calls in the report, but he sounds like a rap. He's like, "Yo, we got a 315 over," and exactly. No cop would sound like that. but yeah, it definitely doesn't take me out of it here because this is pretty much what Ice Cube's character is.
His character is a caricature, basically. Right. In this film, I think that Ice-T has a lot more scenery to chew on, and he's able to kind of, I don't know, I buy him more as an actor, but I think he had way more roles at this point, even in 92, than, he was in New Jack City, for example.
Right. Yeah, he'd been in Hollywood a little longer. I think this was you were telling me. Maybe,
I think this may be Ice Cube's first performance. I'm going to have to double check right now for you, but... Yeah, I can't think of anything before.
I would say, if anything, just quickly about Ice Cube's character, if anything took me out of it, it's certain lines in the script. It's in real life, in a moment like that, I don't think a guy of his nature would say something I'm thinking we got to discourage him.
No.
Exactly.
A gangster wouldn't say that. He didn't do that, but he wouldn't use that exact verbiage, discourage. In a warehouse with guns that's not a word. But I enjoyed it because this
with his nephew or whatever, his brother, in the in with the other guys,
Yeah, Mel, Boys in the Hood is actually his first role. For some reason, I always thought Boys in the Hood was 93 or 94, but it says 91 here. So,
Ice Cube
for it. Okay. So I guess that was his breakout role. He was better in that than he was in this, honestly.
Yeah. But this is much more of an archetypal kind of movie too, where the characters are kind of this is the racist guy. This is the the guy who's morally conflicted. This you know what I mean? It's almost like a morality play, almost like wrestling, like we were talking about before, where the characters are a little more broadly drawn. I felt like. Mm-hmm. And I think Ice Cube in a situation like that is probably just gonna, especially this early in his acting career, is gonna revert back to the character that he knows in that situation.
Hey, John, speaking of wrestling, that bump through the glass onto the
rail,
the railing,
spine first.
Oh my God, that railing! I was like. That looks so bad. Bad in a way, it looked like it really hurt so badly.
I reacted. I was
I did too.
And then he kept falling afterwards. I thought, damn, hasn't he had enough? He's probably already paralyzed. I kept thinking,
I think for a couple of minutes after that, I just kept trying to process it in my head of was that just a dummy? Was it an actual stunt person?
It looked great. Right? The way they shot
it looked amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, in the year 2021, we've obviously been subjected, in the past few decades, to a lot of violence. Is hardly, the thing it was decades ago. We're desensitized, but I got a physical reaction out of that.
But this isn't even violence. There's no gore here. There's no blood. It's just a body hitting a railing, but
that's real violence.
Yeah, it seems so visceral.
What I mean? It's not lasers and it's not machine gun fight. It's like violence that you can really relate to.
You feel it.
You could really feel it.
You see especially, as I get up there in age, I'm like, oh man, you're back? Oh man, you mean the thing I injure by taking a shower and stretching wrong?
Yeah. I'm thinking about it right in a practical sense. It's like, oh, that's his back. Like he needs that.
Yeah. You know? Like, I pulled a muscle sneezing. I can't imagine what happens.
Right. Just the impact. And I'm just thinking, damn, like, hey, this guy can't catch a break, and then he just kind of flops and continues to fall. Like, damn, he's dead.
Yeah, for sure.
That was a hell of a stunt. I don't know how. I don't know what the combination of dummy and actual person, but it felt like that movie didn't seem too huge budget, and I feel like any kind of stunts were going to be pretty practical effects there. That was brutal. Yeah,
it was brutal for sure. I mean, like, just the whole tone of the film for sure is. I mean, I'm the tension, what violence there is. It all feels very real and urgent and present, which helps keep me in the mood of the film. I mean, as it's very quickly set, like from the beginning, I'm like, all right, no, I know going in, this is the Back to the Future guys, Tales from the Crypt guy. You see like the setup already. It's like, oh, we got some treasure. It's like, all right. Check. We're messing with like stolen, spiritual, potentially supernatural artifacts. Yeah. Like this is going to go left. And it doesn't all the way go there. And yet it goes to a place that's just as enjoyable for me. I mean, like there are like cheeky moments, like what feels very Tales to me is as they're pulling up to the building, like you see the no trespassing sign. I'm like, like trespass. Yeah. I get it. Right. I get it. So it's like you open the thing, you got the horror of like the dead guy swinging. Like as soon as I'm like, all right, yeah, this is an ominous place. If I was in this position and I saw that, I'd probably just be like, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we go back to Arkansas, I guess, where they were from, and just leave this alone.
But, one of my favorite moments I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of my favorite moments of that, about that opening, is when they're pulling up to the building, he's like, well, let's pull it around back so the car doesn't get ruined. Like, that was the worry. That was their worry at that point. It was like, someone might break into my car. I don't want anybody to break in my car.
yeah, they're in for a world of trouble beyond,
exactly.
Car theft or tampering or something.
Someone's gonna key their Ford pickup. But I thought it was really interesting that you brought up East St. Louis, because that really stuck out to me as the setting, because normally a movie like this, it's going to be LA, it's going to be Chicago,
right?
It's going to be New York, and I didn't know that about East St. Louis. And that was a really interesting setting for it. Yeah,
it's notoriously unsavory in a lot of ways. Yeah. And like I've been there multiple times. Like I know people. Just want a quick shout out to my guy Jamal. He's a good kid. But there's a stereotype about it. And of course, like any place, there are great people there. There are people who aren't a part of that, negative reputation, aren't about that environment. But it can be a very dangerous place. So for me personally, seeing that was the setting, it's like, oh man, okay, yeah, this could, I don't know what, I was in East St. Louis from 2014 to 2016. That was the East St. Louis I experienced. I don't know if it was as bad as it was then back in 92, but clearly this has had a reputation for a while now.
Right. Yeah, there was, exactly.
Yeah, that was.
And I like too that it wasn't like all East St. Louis. It was this area.
Right.
It was that building, that area. It wasn't like, it wasn't. When you see movies and they depict like the whole neighborhood's like a war zone. It really isn't. Like you said, it's not everybody that lives there.
Yeah,
it's a certain area or something.
Right, and then the gang shows up.
Yeah,
up at the top of the building. We have these guys coming in at the bottom. You're talking about the hanging bodies. I mean, it's really what you're doing is you're transposing a classic, almost sort of, like a dungeon or a cave or anything like that you'd see in an old adventure movie, and you're updating it for modern sensibilities. That's all.
Right. Now it's just a dilapidated, abandoned factory.
Right. In just like an urban industrial setting. And I do think it really works. I mean, there's a lot of films that have purported over the years to be directly influenced by Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Of course, Brian De Palma's Scarface, De Palma himself has said he owes more to Treasure of the Sierra Madre than the original 1932 version of Scarface. Sam Raimi's A Simple Plan, which is a great movie if you've never seen it.
Another Bill Paxton, right? That's Bill Paxton in that.
He's in that one too. Yeah, Bill Paxton.
Yeah.
And Billy Bob Thornton, I believe.
Yeah. I think I saw that in the theater.
Yeah, it's. I mean, just see this one classic film be reinterpreted so many different ways and still work is like it makes me think that, like, okay, when people say Hollywood has no quote unquote original ideas anymore, well, you can say that the that like the synthesis for something like this is Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Just like you can say, you know, in Do the Right Thing, the love and the hate that Radio Raheem has is directly influenced by Night of the Hunter, with the love and the hate.
Okay,
But you're not going to tell me that Do the Right Thing is a ripoff of Night of the Hunter. No. You take an idea, a theme, you know, something, and you transpose it to modern sensibilities, and I think that is more of an original idea than a straight up remake or a sequel. So,
definitely. I mean, there's only so many stories, right?
Exactly.
And this story, this was like we said, this is a morality play.
Yeah,
really,
it's a classic.
You know, of these.
Yeah,
and you're taking the elements of a movie like Treasure of the Sierra Madre, right? The gold, the one of the guys is morally conflicted. One of the guys is straight ahead, like he doesn't care. All he cares about is the gold, you know. And you can take those elements and remix them, just like music. To go back to that, you can remix them and come up with something really interesting. Star Wars is a classic example of that, right?
Yeah, with Akira Kurosawa, right?
Yeah, 100%. You know, that's a classic example of taking that and taking those elements and making something new with it. You know, and because you're only going to, you know, you can only tell the story of, you know, boy meets girl, boy loses girl, you know, and it's really how you tell it that makes the difference.
Yeah, there are so many, you know, boy meets girl, you got your coming of age story, you got like your classic Western. I mean, there's a reason, you know, these types of stories endure, because at their core, you know, they will always be applicable to, you know, humanity, no matter what point in the timeline we are, you know, whether it's 2021 through 2005, I imagine these things will still resonate. Like I was saying to Moulz off air, like what I really appreciated about this film was like this idea of gold, which seems kind of antiquated now because no one is like really going out. All we hear now is like cryptocurrency and like NFTs and things like that.
Yeah, that'd be a little boring to
right. Yeah, so like it seems kind of like quaint, like gold, but I really enjoyed that.
You know, seeing the goblet with like the encrusted stones and stuff like that.
The Holy Grail,
like classic treasure.
It was classic treasure in that urban setting. You know,
and I love that.
Yeah, that was wonderful. It was almost like an anachronism. It was really cool.
Mel, speaking of bringing something up to me off air, you were asking me earlier, what was the point of the camcorder?
Right. Like so throughout, I found that interesting because I enjoyed it. Like, you know, kind of one of the guys in the gang just was like periodically recording things through, you know, the lens of his camera. And ultimately,
and you would see it. The audience would see
it.
Right.
Like, us as the audience, we were able to see that like through that like camera filter. Like ultimately, it didn't really factor into the plot at all, which I thought was hilarious. Because I enjoyed like that little thing.
I was saying to you off air, I think it was an excuse to employ an interesting stylistic choice. They didn't overdo it.
Right.
And I do think it provided like an interesting visual change of pace at points.
Right.
I also thought it gave you it gave you a way to because the characters were in such a static setting, and it did kind of come off like a play a little in that respect. It allowed the characters to talk to the audience, and you kind of got a little bit of what they're thinking without it being total expository, you know?
Exactly. Like the scene with Ice-T where he's kind of talking about, you know, social politics, and it's like, the black man, you know, they give us the drugs and you get moments like that. you get stuff off screen where like they're discussing like there's some infighting between like Ice Cube's character and Ice-T's character, you know, and it also can just give us flat out, you know, the hilarious moments like, you know,
there's some great moments.
Giving plans and then he turns there, he's like, get that goddamn camera out of my face,
wonderful.
I really.
I mean, that was kind of the payoff of it, really. That was,
right, like it gets smashed at the end, and I was kind of felt bad. I'm like, hey, it's camera, like you didn't have to break the, you know, but it's like, oh, okay, there's that, you know, but
but it was an interesting way to get that information and get that those character moments without that might not come through in dialogue,
right,
as much,
you know. Yeah, it was just like little things like that. I thought were very interesting. I was reading a bit about the film after I saw it, and it was interesting to see that, like, you know, the little moments, I guess, of social commentary or like, you know, political commentary that they have about, you know, the state of, you know, I guess race relations, also class relations at the time. Like, I think
at the time, I think it still goes today. That's
that unfortunately, like, it still applies to today. Yeah. But, you know, it was interesting. I think the director was saying, you know, intentionally, like those elements, they just kind of formed organically. You know, he's like, he didn't, you know, outright, you know, set out to make, you know, those statements, but, you know, they just happened naturally as a result of the setting and the plot and the cast. And he was saying too, what I found was interesting, you know, with it coming out in 92, I guess it was originally going to be called The Looters, but what happened was the riots, like the LA riots in 92. And they're like, oh, we kind of don't want to, you know, evoke that imagery.
Sure, of course. Or make it seem like you're trying to capitalize on it.
Right.
Or something like that.
You know, so I thought that was interesting.
Oh, man. But, I just, every time I hear about stuff like that, I just think of, what if they changed the name of Let's Be Cops to something else?
When that came out, that was some of the worst timing ever. I mean, like, that was the Ferguson thing.
It literally came out. It came out the weekend after the Ferguson riots, and like, I gotta tell you, I did see that film, and it was very funny, and it was like, up until maybe the last scene for one of the characters, I would not even describe it as like police propaganda. It's like a goofball movie where these guys like. They're not actually cops, you know? Like, it's a whole thing. It's actually a pretty funny movie. And I just think, man, if they pushed this movie back like 2 or 3 months and gave it a different title, it might have done okay.
Right.
But
it was a victim of circumstance.
It's one of the great victims of circumstance. Let's Be Cops. All I gotta say is pour one out for Let's Be Cops, folks. I mean,
I remember seeing the trailer like in theaters. Probably when I was going to see some superhero movie, and I was like, that looks amusing. And then like around when it came out, I remember seeing like the poster again. I'm like, yikes.
Let's not be cops.
Yeah, you know, this is probably a bad time, you know. But I mean, I'm glad that this Trespass was able to, you know, I guess change its title and still come out.
Yeah, good for them. You know? I'm glad. I mean,
good for them.
For what it's worth, you know, I read some reviews last night where people were like complaining about the optics of this film, but for a film made in 1992, I don't think that it's really like that bad, honestly. Like, I think honestly Judgment Night was probably worse from an optics point of view, really.
And it's these are interesting films because they're both seem kind of doing the same things in terms of plot, but also like when you dive into that social commentary area. And I mean, Judgment Day as a whole film is kind of disjointed.
Judgment
I keep saying Judgment Day because we're wrestling then.
The pay-per-view from May, usually May-ish.
Yeah, around May. I wish they'd bring it back, you know, instead of these new pay-per-view titles. But that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, Judgment Night was a little disjointed and aimless and kind of playing with the same themes. And I feel like this film pulls it off a lot better. So much better. And
not
it's
only
like,
does it pull it off better, I felt like Judgment Night is a film that leans on building up suspense for long periods of time, and it doesn't pay off. And this is a film that goes and builds on long periods of suspense, and each time it pays off.
Yeah, I felt like it paid off. I mean, like
the chessboard, like the pieces on the chessboard change positions a little bit, you know, and it's like it's a skirmish. It's like why it's. You know, you watch it with like, you know, that I'm watching this movie halfway through. I'm like, oh fuck, no one's making it out of this building alive.
Yeah,
No,
you get
oh,
the
God,
sense.
no.
I
Yeah,
mean, it's very quick. I mean, it's one of those films like we talk about like archetypes and you know how stories get recycled. You start to recognize the beats. Like maybe 2/3 of the way through the film, I'm like, yeah, okay, so the bum, he's gonna end up with the gold, like naturally, because he's the guy who's been kind of neutral the whole time. Everyone else is kind of getting consumed by greed slowly, you know, surely. It's probably going to be this guy's going to get the gold. I could tell early on there's some cute foreshadowing, like the character Lucky. You know, he kind of has this moment. He's like, yeah, I'm lucky because I've never been hit in like 3 drive-bys. And I'm like, oh, yeah, he's for sure getting lit up.
You're done. Yeah.
Before the end of this movie. And I wasn't sure. I thought like they were going to start blasting. Yeah. Oh, he had some moments, like, you know, you know, of course, like with the syringe and everything. I probably figured he's gonna get this guy, but for a split second, I'm like, maybe he's just gonna administer the drugs to himself, like he said he was gonna do. But then, of course, he gets stabbed. Like, yeah, there it is, stabs the guy in the neck. I thought for sure he was gonna still be pinned against the door. And like maybe the new guys that showed up with like the heavy artillery weren't going to get informed that he was like up against the door and they were going to like shoot him up in ice. He's like, no, my brother was like, but no, what happens is, well, I guess one of the people who did show up does end up shooting him. It's like the guy with the sniper rifle. And I'm like, okay. Well, yeah, he's not so lucky.
That guy was great. He's like, tell him I'm sorry. I gotta go.
Yeah, I guess he, you know, right. Now that I think of it, I guess he escaped. You know, because like we don't see him anymore.
No, he got out of there. He's like, I got stuff to do. I think I left the iron on. I gotta go.
Yeah, he hightails. He's like, yeah, all right. So I screwed that up. Tell King James, like I had somewhere to be. Like,
oh, dude. By the way, there's a line in the film, something about like King James is on some bullshit right now or something like that. And I'm gonna need you to clip it for whenever we do that 2 Chainz album that he screwed up the whole he messed up the whole game because he went that night to go to 2 Chainz studio instead of resting.
Oh yeah, it's funny as I'm watching the film, I'm thinking King James. I'm obviously just thinking LeBron the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll clip that for when we do the 2 Chainz album that LeBron executive produced and ruined.
and you know what? Yeah. Get that one ready if we ever do Untitled Unmastered also.
Oh yeah, because without LeBron, you know, coaxing Kendrick into putting that out, you know, which isn't a great project to me.
I love LeBron, but these
LeBron's a great guy, but when he dabbles in hip hop,
it doesn't work. It doesn't work out well.
He was very funny. He was very funny in the Amy Schumer movie, though.
Yeah, I've seen his clips.
He was like the best part of it. He
kind
was
of
the
a
funniest part of it.
Yeah, he has like, you know, really some good comedic timing, good, you know, screen presence. I'm looking for.
How do they make that movie? And John Cena and freaking LeBron James are the best guys in the movie.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's true. I forgot about John Cena. Well, yeah, you're right. They were like the best.
He does like the typical like Apatow 3-scene bit part.
Yeah.
But it's great. I mean, he's awesome to do.
I want to say I'm looking as someone who was initially, you know, very averse to the idea and, you know, leave the classics alone. When I heard, you know, they were doing Space Jam for a new year, I'm like, no, don't do it. But as time, it wore me down. And I'm like, you know what? Let the kids have, like, I guess let them have their Space Jam. And I'm looking forward to it because LeBron's a pretty good actor. So I'm like, I gotta see it. I'll see the new Space Jam. I don't need it to top the original.
It's going to be like, all right, my feeling on it, and I think I said this in the last episode, It.
The It reboot.
The original It sucks as a movie, but it's not even a real movie.
That's fighting words to me. I love. First of all, the book is like it's one of my favorite books ever. I just think is a brilliant book. It's, you know.
Now, John, hear me out.
Yeah. Yes. But I think the miniseries does a better job with building the tension than the movies do.
Okay. Because
they include the phone calls and the way they build it up. Now, the second night where John Ritter's fighting a giant spider, look, I can't stand up for that. Who can? But, you know,
as a TV movie, it's really good. Yeah. Like, if we're gonna put it up against like Carrie or The Shining or like those, I'm not on board with that, and I'll tell you why. I think Tim Curry is absolutely brilliant in those movies. His portrayal of Pennywise is my preferred Pennywise. Now,
oh sure, yeah.
In the remake, I thought overall, like, the filmmaking was better. I wasn't so much a fan of the Bill Skarsgård Pennywise. So I kind of ultimately end up having to like both films, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I draw the line on It Chapter 2, and that's worse than John Ritter fighting the giant spider.
Oh yeah. No, that's that goes to a whole different weird place. I think it lost a lot by not having the phone calls and that framing of the story like it has in the book and like it has in the original miniseries of that them getting the calls and then them remembering, and that tension really builds because they start to remember what happened, because it really is the book is about like basically dealing with your childhood trauma,
right?
I mean that's the what it's really about. And as they start to remember it and they start to like relive it and experience it, you're going on the ride with them instead of we're going to tell this part of the story and then this part of the story.
Right. You know, and I think for me, that's why I've always liked the original, because I saw it as like a mini series. Like I saw it on TV the first time I saw it when I was like, I don't know, 9 or 10 or something. So that was the version that I was used to, like kind of episodic and, you know, taking it, you know, it's more measured. It's more, you know, meticulous in the storytelling. That's the one I'm accustomed to. And like,
I thought they did a better job of making the group a bond more.
Yeah. You know,
the kids. Yeah.
Right. Like I saw the reboot. I think you know, on the scale, I gave It Chapter 1 a 7. I didn't see Chapter 2, but Moulz told me it wasn't great.
Oh my God.
I may see it one day.
It's It Chapter 2 is it's a 2. It's a 2. A 2 out of 10.
Oh,
yeah. It just.
Well, I'll hit the buzzer for it then. It's a 2.
Easily the shittiest horror movie of the 2010s.
Wow.
It didn't have like any soul to it.
Is it worse than
than
the Evil Dead reboot?
Yes.
Okay, because the Evil Dead reboot for me was probably like a 5 or 6.
Reboot is still a horror movie. It has like gore in it, and it's over in an hour and a half. So this movie is 2.5 hours long, which it didn't have to be. It really didn't have to be that way, It Chapter 2, but it's 2.5 hours long. It's so expository at points. The action in it is horrible. Like, it's all this CGI. Giant Paul Bunyan statue coming to life. Like, what? I mean,
giant old lady.
Yeah, giant old lady. Giant everything. Everything just turns big, and when it turns big, it's not scary anymore. It's like an action film at that point. Like, it's not.
And they did this bit so many times of, I look over here. Oh, there's nothing. I turn around. There it is. Like, and they did that at least 5 times. And at one point, they had a weird music cue where this kid one of the kids is I think it might have been Eddie, is finding where he thought his mom was like tied up down the basement, and it turns out it's the leper, and the leper like pukes like on him, and then they kick in with "Call Me Angel," like they had the music cue kicks in, and it's like, well, it was like, whoa, they just like totally took any horror out of it, and they made it a gag, and it was.
I guess because Bill Hader's in it, they thought, let's shoehorn some comedy into this movie too, because there's not enough shit going on.
Yeah.
And they get into that bag a little bit. It's genuinely a piece of shit. And I try to see good in a lot of garbage. You know, I like a lot of quote unquote bad movies, but there's nothing to enjoy in It Chapter 2.
Yeah. And I didn't like how they went full into Pennywise being a shapeshifter. It's not really a shapeshifter. It's like this. It's a
personification of fear.
Fear, and exactly, and evil, and that you see it as what you're afraid of. You see it as this horror. You know, like in the book, you know, Bev would hear her dad's voice coming from it. You know, as she was eavesdropping on Henry and the clown or whatever, you know, and that kind of stuff. But in the movie, they made it like a monster movie where it could just change shape.
Right? Yeah, and become a giant Paul Bunyan.
Right.
But before I forget, because I meant to mention this, I guess because we're all wrestling fans, there's a moment in this film Trespass where I guess the group dynamic of Ice-T and all of his guys is starting to break down because Ice Cube's character Savan, is starting to question the leadership, right? And it reminded me of the whole angle with Evolution in the early 2000s. I'm looking at King James sort of like Triple H, and I'm getting like Batista, like Randy Orton energy from Ice Cube, and I'm like, this is gonna fall apart, and it never fully does. Like they come to blows, but like, they don't actually like fight. They they kind of just go off and do their own thing. But like, I thought that was interesting because I thought, okay, we're gonna have like multiple factions by the end of this. It's gonna be like, the two white guys and then Ice-T's group, and then Ice Cube is gonna split off into his own group, and now there are gonna be like 3 competing factions. But like that
I
never
was waiting
actually
for that too. I thought like at some point we were gonna get a full on turn from Ice Cube, just being the hothead that he is, in this film. Never fully goes there, but once things start to really ramp up in the last 15-20 minutes, and we really get that big finale. I don't know about you guys. I know sometimes this stuff can rub people the wrong way. There was a movie, John, that I just recommended you with James Cagney and Sheridan in it.
I found it. Yeah, I haven't watched it yet though.
City for Conquest. So
yeah.
Mel ended up watching it. He enjoyed it very much. Mel, did the endings remind you of one another a little bit?
Yeah, I would say, and kind of how
the framing,
sweet,
but the framing more so than anything else, I guess. Like not the actual ending, but like the final punchline, if you will.
How it all sort of comes back.
Yeah, I laughed at the end. I got a big kick out of it, honestly. When he swings that bag over his shoulder.
Oh, totally. Like off. Santa? Yeah. Yeah, he just walks off. That was great.
Yeah, and like even like I definitely like predicted this is the ending, and that didn't, ruin it for me at all. Like it was enjoyable. It's like, okay,
well, it was a logical ending.
Right?
Like you'd want, that's what, if you want any of them to go
get it, right.
The only 2 endings were either he gets the gold or somehow the building implodes and no one gets the gold.
Right. Because if it is a morality play, we have to err on the side of good morality by the end of it, right?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And the bad morality has to be punished somehow.
Right. Which is why I don't think the color and the socioeconomic that those beats bothered me as much as they might in something else, because the white guys were no heroes.
Right. And ultimately you see how this greed is corrupting everyone, across racial lines.
Yeah. But, in classic Tales from the Crypt fashion, bring it back to that, it's always a tale of comeuppance in Tales from the Crypt.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like Twilight Zone, like any good horror, right? Like that's why it definitely had, going back to that, it had that horror feel to it without it being a horror movie.
Yeah. For sure.
It was really interesting. I don't know how to put my finger on it, but it just, like, you could, like we said, you could see it slipping into a horror movie at any moment.
Man, we haven't gotten a chance to speak on this yet. While I'm here, and John, while you're here, have you ever seen To Sleep with Anger?
No.
Oh man, this is directed by Charles Burnett, and it's from 1990, and it stars Danny Glover. And this is like the most teetering into horror territory without being a horror movie that I've ever seen. The film is absolutely brilliant. Mel, have you gotten a chance to see this one?
Not yet.
This movie, To Sleep with Anger, that and City for Conquest are my 2 big discoveries this year. I love both of these.
Oh, cool. I'll definitely check it out.
Amazing film. Danny Glover, when Criterion put the Blu-ray out a few years ago, Danny Glover went on Twitter and made a tweet saying, this is like probably one of my favorite films I've ever done. I'm so glad that people get to see it now. So,
oh, that's wonderful. I love when actors do that. Like when they come out and they're like a movie that you may not have heard of, and they're like, no, this was like, this is my favorite thing of my career.
Yeah, he said that, like, you know, when the film opened, it only opened to 25 theaters in the United States, so it really didn't have a chance. And I mean, this movie is just blow away brilliant, amazing, like my highest recommendation possible. But this is another film that, again, like this film, not as much as To Sleep with Anger, but there are these horror elements, or at least this sense of dread that feels like it's creeping up around the corner at any time. And it maintains that sense of dread and tension and suspense throughout the whole film. This is my first viewing of this film, so I had to be a little, conservative here. I'm going with 7+ right now, but this is a lot of fun. Mel, when we talked about on Judgment Night, how Judgment Night reminded us of a film that would air on like WPIX on Saturday afternoons in a bad way, like that feeling of just being like a young
it's
adult.
a genre the depression movie. It's like it's on in the background, and it's kind of just occupying space in the day, and like you're watching it but like not all the way tuned in, just sort of half-heartedly.
You came in 20 minutes late to begin with,
right, and it's just like it's just that vague sense of melancholy just lingering in the air as you're watching it.
It's a movie, like it's a movie that they're playing on television with commercial breaks in between and edits, and it's just life is tough. And this is one of the movies that would be on WPIX, and you're like, oh,
right, and you start watching it, and then you're like, this is kind of engrossing, and you kind of sit down and notice yourself getting invested, and by the end you're like, wow, that was good. It's Trespass, huh? Like and then you remember seeing it. Like,
you told your dad today that you were going to do this review, and his response.
Oh yeah, so I told my dad we were doing this, and he's like, my dad was born in 1975. So when this came out, he was like,
I'm older than your dad.
Oh, okay.
Wow. I'm 3 years older than your dad. I'm your dad now. I'm your dad now. I'm the captain now.
Listen, Dad, you got some competition. Have you listened? He told me, he's like, I told him we were watching, he's like, oh, I've seen it. He said, I love me some Trespass. Because I guess he saw this. Yeah. Like, when he was younger. So he's like, yeah, Ice-T. And I was like, yeah, so you're familiar? He's like, yeah, it's pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, it is, right? Like,
it's that kind of movie.
Right. It's one of those movies.
I love that movie. That movie's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
another
fun
movie,
is the
what it
word
reminded
for
me
it.
of, too, was Assault on Precinct 13.
Oh, yeah. John Carpenter, man. I love that.
Yeah, which also has that similar, it's a base under siege type movie. It had the horror elements. Yeah, that one was a little more cartoony and a little slower paced with that vibe to it. But it had a lot of those elements. You could see the influence of that on this movie.
Yeah, this is like almost like a cleaned up, less gritty version of it, and that's not a bad thing. I think it works.
No, because Assault on Precinct 13 has more of like that Night of the Living Dead kind of vibe.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is that's another. They're attacking the house. They're locked up. They're in one location. Those kind of movies, those bottleneck, those based under siege type of stories are really effective, especially when you're trying to show character. And because the character and the different types of characters playing off each other, and you can get away with getting some really good social commentary with those types of movies.
Well, John, I was actually curious because I know in addition to performing as an actor, you also teach acting.
Yes, yeah. I'm a private audition coach, and I also do 2 audition classes weekly on Monday mornings and Wednesday evenings.
So as a coach as well as an actor yourself, who do you think was the best actor in this film?
Oh, wow. The best actor? That's different than my favorite character. So,
Okay.
you see what I'm saying? My favorite character was Art Evans. Was the transient? What was his name? Bradley. Bradley.
Yeah, Bradley.
Yeah. He was my favorite character, and just was great and really funny. Acting wise, I might go with Bill Paxton.
Okay.
Because he had to play the conflict, and I thought he did a really good job of it. Where he was a great eyes of the audience type of character, where it made you think like, what would I do if I was in this situation? Which I think a movie like this, when it can do that, makes it even better. Because you're like, what would I do if I was, oh man, could you imagine if I was trapped, like, and then people want to kill me and I had gold and.
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning when they first get in there and find the body, he's like, "We got to report this."
Yeah, exactly. He has very logical reactions that aren't like just I am a mustache twirling villain. Right. Like he has very normal everyman kind of reactions to this.
When you think about it too, he and Bill Sadler are both playing firefighters. If they were both playing the same type of character and they were kind of like in on the scheme together and willing to go with whatever one another says, I wouldn't believe that they were firefighters. I'm like, these guys aren't firefighters, they're bandits, So you need someone with a little bit more of like a little bit like stronger moral fiber, I guess, to keep the film intact and to keep someone somewhat sympathetic out of the four main players.
Definitely. Yeah. So I would say I thought he was the I think he also had the most to work with.
Yeah, he cracked me
because
up
William Sadler was playing a much more straight ahead type of character. Same with Ice Cube and Ice-T.
When he nearly got sniped by the window, and then he walks back in front of the window where the bullet hole is, and he looks for a second. I cracked up. Yeah. I was like, man, that's just like physical acting with your face, like just with your face. Yeah. There's no words that are being said,
No, and the thing is, it's not even with his face. It's he was really thinking it.
Right, exactly.
That's the key. He was really thinking, oh shit. Like, oh my God, that could have been me. Because if you're really thinking it, especially on camera, where it's so close, the audience sees it. And that's when when comedy is really funny, and it's when drama really works, is when the actor is really thinking the thoughts of what you would be thinking in that situation, and not trying to make it, like, he didn't try to make that funny. It was funny because he had the holy shit, that moment of like, and then the visual of the bullet hole right there, at his head.
Right, and as an audience member, you're going, "Get down, you idiot! Get down!"
Yeah, you idiot! Yeah, he's got more. There's more. It's not just a single shotgun. One of the things too that I forgot to bring up earlier, and I would definitely want to mention was that like trope or the way when they tie Lucky to the door to prevent them from coming in. Mm-hmm. Like they tie him across the door frame so that they can't, not only can they not shoot in, they can't break the door in, or they're going to rip his arms off. Like that's kind of like that's a horror kind of, but like also Western horror kind of thing. Yeah. It's really, it's that like, look, you can't come in here. There are consequences.
Well, at first they're trying to use like some black electrical tape.
Oh God. Yeah.
And it's just that like, when you're put in those sort of situations, I guess you're right. You have to make it real, right?
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd ever have to bring this up on the show, but I did one of those extreme haunts where you have to sign a waiver before you go in.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, I'm not an actor, so this was like the closest I had to, I would say, like an experience where I had to buy in, because ultimately I knew, even though they can touch me, even though they could technically, like, I've given them permission to essentially like harm me, they're not going to do anything to me. No. That's really, I mean, if I leave here with more than a couple scrapes, I'd be surprised. So I went in and I was like the hero in the horror movie. So the first thing was in the first room, there's a bunch of wood pallets, like grates. And this crazy guy who's all bloody and naked drops a bunch of keys into the wooden pallets. And then he's going up and like screaming at people and scaring them and stuff. You have to get the keys out of the wooden pallet and unlock the keys based on the color of the key matching with the lock of that color. So, I took the lead. The captain, of course, takes the lead. And I treated it like I was really in the situation. And I bought in, 100%. Then, John, unfortunately, I don't want to describe what happened afterwards, but it involved a woman peeing on my head at one point.
Whoa!
And just a lot of other scary, weird shit going down, and then some physical abuse. But I made it out, and I felt like I led my group to safety and to minimal bodily harm in that situation. And it's about buying in. It's like when we saw. It
doesn't sound like you had a choice to buy in at that point when people are peeing on
there's
your
a
head.
safe word.
Okay, all right.
The problem is if I utter the safe word, I'm going to ruin it for my whole group. Everyone's going to have to leave now. So there's a lot of pressure to not blow the thing for everybody else. But I felt like I was early on. I felt like I was like the leader. I was the protagonist, and then as they wear you down a little bit. I started to feel like the Viper Randy Orton going up against the Fiend Bray Wyatt. I was about to start vomiting up black liquids. Okay, a lot of crazy shit was gonna have to start happening. So,
well, let me ask you then, because that's kind of interesting what you said. Like you started off as the hero. Did you find yourself changing like your role? Like subconsciously, like where you're like, what? Screw these people. They're not doing enough to help me. They're on their own now. You know what I mean?
There came a point where it stopped being like weird, gross, scary shit, and it got into the physical aspect of it.
Yeah.
And almost like a weirdly sexual aspect that I was almost uncomfortable with. So it came to a point where they were basically telling us to like strip down. And I wasn't about to say the safe word, but at that point, I was like, fuck out of here, man. And they told me to, like, sit on the ground instead of up on these things that they were, like, telling the people to, like, take their fucking pants off and shit. And I was like, I'm not fucking taking my pants off, dude. So, like, whatever you gotta do, do it. And they put a freaking bag on my head and put me up against a brick wall. And then they were, like, kicking at me. And, like, it was not good. But, like, there came a point where I'm like, fuck this group. Like, I don't care what happens to them. And they basically told me, like, you're going to just abandon your group? And I was like, yeah, because I'm not taking my fucking pants off. And they didn't like that. And they put me down against the brick wall against where other people who refused to take their pants off were standing.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm sure your group that you abandoned was like,
man, did this dude just did this?
I mean, I put myself in harm's way and in urine's way and every other thing's way. And I don't
like that description. Every other thing. I don't want to know. I don't think I want to know what the other things were.
all I'll say is if you have an opportunity at any point in Los Angeles or in New York to do the blackout haunted house, don't do it, because all that ended up happening was ultimately my knees and elbows were like a little scraped up, and they put like lipstick on my face and on my chest and shit, and like it was weird because I thought I had taken all this shit off, but then when I went to the gas station, I got back to Long Island, and I went to the gas station, and the dude at the gas station's like, what's all that shit on your face? And it like was still on there, I guess, to an extent. Like you could still see like faintly the shit. And I'm like, that's the horror of this shit. Like you go back home and it's like you look like you've been involved in something like a weird like orgy sort of deal or something. and this is how they get you. This is like but it wasn't.
That's how they get you. That's the mark of the beast.
That's the mark. And like I'm more of a. I love haunted attractions, but I'm more of like a not scary farm Universal Horror Nights kind of guy.
Yeah, that's like, a little too much for me.
Like the actors popping out, and I like the cool set pieces. I don't know if I like the physical and mental abuse stuff.
I don't want anybody touching me.
Yeah.
No way. That it's just like when I go to a show, I want you to do the like I don't want to be in dinner theater. I don't want even as a comic, I tried not to talk to the audience unless it was just a situation that really called for it. During my stand-up days, like I like if I go to a show, I want you to do the show over there, and I will sit over here and watch it and hopefully enjoy it. But don't bring me into it. Yeah, you do what you're going to do over there.
As it turns out, the whole you can't touch, like scare actors can't touch people in haunted houses is actually a good rule. And it's a nice boundary to know exists where no matter how scary something is going to be, they're never going to physically harm me.
Right.
But then essentially signing up to be physically harmed is not scary to me. It's more, and it's not like at one point I just thought at one point, okay, this isn't scary. This is weird. And I'm not going to ruin this for my group, but like I'm outie. Like you guys are asking me to like pull my pants down. Like that's some weirdo shit, you know, like let's keep it up. I'm not doing that.
That's crossing a boundary. Yeah, that's not like grabbing you in a headlock or you know like
pushing me or
that kind of like very minimal stuff. You know stuff that and then the kicking and everything like that's like on set. Yeah, they hire stunt people for that. That stuff's really dangerous. You can really hurt somebody with that.
And you sign away a waiver saying if I end up getting injured doing this shit, it's not your fault. You're not liable.
Yeah.
So that's when you're like crawling on your hands and knees with a bag on your head through like what I would only be able to describe as like the kind of like an adult version of a cat tunnel.
Yeah.
And there's people kicking the tunnel while you're walking. It's like, this isn't scary. This is, but there's worse shit too. Like I've seen this McCamey Manor that they used to be out in like Santa Clarita or something like that, but now they moved to like Tennessee or something. And this guy, like nobody's completed this haunt. They sign a waiver, and like people have went through like serious physical and mental trauma because of this guy. If you have time and you're interested, you just look up McCamey Manor on YouTube, and I'm sure there will be a ton of videos talking about this guy.
Wow.
And that
just sounds like an excuse to abuse people.
It is.
It just sounds like, it doesn't sound like that's not an entertainment thing.
Is you don't pay to get in. You have to sign up. You have to be cleared by like a psychologist that you don't have any like existing mental issues, because I guess they're going to just create the mental issues for you.
Yeah.
And you pay with like dog food. Like you bring 2 cans of dog food to get in, which I think they make you eat at one point.
What? I would think that. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I can't imagine. And if I'm bringing dog food to something like that, I'm expecting that it's...
Yeah. They basically, you're signing up, you're signing a waiver, and you're allowing them to torture you in any way they see fit, including like waterboarding you and stuff. Yeah, and putting like spiders and snakes on you and stuff like that. I mean, that's the stuff that I did was nowhere near the level of what this guy does. And even I was like at probably the most mainstream and safe extreme haunt, I was like, all right, this is at best stupid and at worst totally dangerous. The build-up to get into the haunt is scarier. Like when you're sitting in a dark room and they're telling you to surrender your belongings and you won't get them back till afterwards, and you're listening to this thing alone in a room with like headphones. Very scary. And then the thing starts, and it's more physical abuse and weird shit like getting peed on and touching like wet noodles and shit.
I think Carmela has something to say.
Hi guys. Okay, we're gonna stop with this. We're gonna talk about something else.
Yeah.
Extreme haunts, folks, right here on Moulz Mel.
And it sounds like such a oh, it's a haunt. It sounds so like benign. It's
not a haunt.
That's fun.
Haunts
it's a haunt.
I feel like a haunt involves things that haunt, like ghosts and ghouls and
something
things.
Scary, not that's going to abuse you.
Right. It's basically just hostile but real.
Yeah.
And you sign yourself away to do it. But yeah, that's enough of that. We're going to be talking about something else.
Jeez.
It's hard. That's a hard to follow.
It's a hard act to follow for sure. How do we get on the subject of extreme haunts?
Don't even remember.
I think it came from where we were talking about Trespass, like the archetype, the character types in Trespass.
Oh, right.
It
was your comment about the bullet and believing you're in that moment.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And now I'm talking about wearing a bag on my head and getting kicked.
I bet you were believing that.
As Erykah Badu once said, "Baghead, you gonna get kicked in your ass."
That is not the song. But, all right.
Baghead. It's a song she wrote about me. Oh, a bag lady, right. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of
Baghead.
I'm thinking about Baghead by Melvin Birch. The song
I never made that song.
For my struggles.
That is not a song I made. I've made plenty of bad songs in the past, but that is not one of them. Anyway. Trespass, folks. That's pretty much
That's pretty much it.
John, before we get out of here, do you have anything you want to plug? And anywhere people can find you if you want them to or not?
Sure, yeah. They like you'd mentioned the movie Concessionaires Must Die. You can rent that on Amazon or iTunes. Basically, the movie's about the dying days of a single screen movie theater. It's kind of like Empire Records, but in a movie theater. If you've ever seen that. And Stan Lee is in it. He actually has a small part in it, which is one of his only acting parts that is not an actual cameo. He's actually
okay.
He plays one of the characters' grandfather in a flashback. So that was pretty cool. And if you were an actor listening to this and you're interested in signing up for an audition class with me, you can find me on Instagram or Twitter at jkeats, JKEATS. And hit me up there and I can let you give you information on any of that stuff.
Wow. We love it.
Cool.
So
thank you guys for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks.
Just hang on. Just bear with us for a moment while I do this outro. We'll get your audio and you'll be free to go. Thanks again, John.
Thank you.
All right. Here's your music.
Yeah. Hustle. Some people say it's the act of going for it. Flow. We know all about that. We do rap rankings after all. But what happens when hustle and flow meet? Well, next week on Moulz Mel at the Movies, we're going to find out when we check out the 2005 film Hustle and Flow, starring Terrence Howard as DJ in an aspiring rapper's tale of redemption. Next week on Moulz Mel at the Movies, Hustle and Flow.
Hey, it's Mel from Rap Rankings. To hear the full episode this clip comes from and all of the other episodes, check the link in the description, stop by raprankings.com, or search Rap Rankings on your favorite podcast platform. And please consider liking, subscribing, and commenting to help us grow the channel and continue our journey as hip-hop's first and premier extreme podcast.